Welcome back to this edition of TSL Today. In the first segment, we talked Tech Baseball Series loss to North Carolina this past weekend, but now it's time to focus on the softball team. Virginia Tech takes 2 of 3 from number 6 Clemson, and who better to talk about it with than Kyle Marchak across the way, who called all 3 games for the ACC Network Extra. Kyle, thanks for hopping on.
Thank you. Yeah, I was only supposed to call the back 2, but then the rain delay happened for game 1, so they gave me the final 5 innings of game 1 on Saturday as well. It was a long weekend, Carter.
Poor Bailey Angle. Bailey Angle called the first 2 innings on Friday, and then you got it the rest of the way. But sometimes that all works out. So it worked out for you, and you had quite the weekend, in the broadcast booth.
I had a blast, and before we even dig into it, I will say, now Bailey's a nice guy, so no one take this the wrong way. He came in with after game 1 and said he was like, "I'm not gonna lie, Kyle, I'm jealous of you." And him and I had a good joke about that because game 1 was a wild one out of a whole series of wackiness.
Well, game 1 certainly was a wild one, and when you look at it, that kind of could be the game in the 2023 season that really gets Virginia Tech softball rolling. Now, it was the final regular season series of the year, but you're down 4-0 against the number 6 team in the country who started the year 37-1, no less, okay? They're down 4-0. They put up a 5 spot in the 7th, aided by a 3-run walk-off bomb off the bat of Cameron Fagan to take game 1 and really take all the momentum early on in the series.
It was unbelievable. I think you can talk about that game in particular, or you can talk about the series as a whole, look back at it and say, if you want to think of one sequence of softball from Virginia Tech this year, that is the series that will be remembered for a very long time. And if you look back at the series as a whole as well, I said it a few times in the broadcast, and I'm very, very confident in this. I think this is the beginning of a great ACC rivalry in softball, because these teams after this series, the way it went to, it being split 2-1 Hokies, they do not like each other, and you'll touch on why a little bit more in the series.
Well,
too.
I do want to preface it with this before we move on. I think we did a poor job in the open talking about this. Just for those who missed it, Virginia Tech and Clemson played the first 2 innings of game 1 on Friday. We then go into a weather delay that lasted, I want to say, like 3 hours and 15 minutes. We're all sitting through it, waiting for them to play. They're finally ready to play. It was supposed to be an 8 o'clock first pitch, okay? The Hokies are about to take the field. We're about to pick up in the top of the 3rd. It was scoreless between Tech and Clemson. Tech is about to take the field. The umpires then gather with Pete Demore and John Rittman, the Clemson head coach, in right center field and point out some standing water. And John Rittman, if you're watching, I'll look into the camera right now, he motioned to the Clemson dugout like the acts like, oh, we're not playing. So he, if you're listening, kind of raised his right hand and slashed it across his throat saying, okay, we're done, we're not going to play. Pete Demore, I don't want to say arguing, but was going back and forth with the umpires about, okay, we sat through a 3.5 hour delay to not play. So Nick Brown and I, we had just gone back on the air calling the game for Learfield. And boom, we're done. So we pick back up at 2 o'clock the following day. Again, Virginia Tech down 4-0. They come back, they win that ball game 5-4. And then they start game 2 30 minutes later. And it seemed like all the momentum carried over, especially after what happened in the first inning. I mean, just what a wild day of softball.
This is, I do not want to make it personal because it's not about me, but it's so ironic that as a young man now, I'm only a sophomore, the few broadcasts I've gotten on the network have been so wacky. And I'm not complaining. Honestly, if anything, I am very happy about it because it makes it so darn fun, which is it is every time. I called baseball, had two rain delays, an umpire got injured, which you never like to see. It was just a whole lot of wackiness in baseball. That was that
Georgia Tech game.
Georgia Tech game. Yeah. And then, of course, we get softball. I pick up the back half of a rain delay. And like I said, there was a lot more that happened. But in game 1 alone, I'll give you the chronology. I know we're kind of beating a dead horse here. Original start time for game 1 on Friday was 6 p.m. Got pushed to 4 for rain. They go through 2 innings. As you said, long rain delay. Eventually, they call it 8 o'clock. We resume play, 2 innings flat into the game. So the Hokies take the field. We have 5 innings of softball left to play. That ended up being the best 5 innings of softball I've ever gotten a call. And it was an unbelievable finish to game 1. And like you said, the momentum carried over. Cam Fagan's walk-off was unbelievable. I mean, that was awesome. Storybook. That's what Rain and I were saying on the broadcast. The way that they were down 4-0.
Shout out Rain Wilson.
Shout out Rain. We miss you, Rain. It was nice working with you this year. She took the long trip back down to North Carolina after all that. Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, we've seen it a couple times.
Yeah.
But how many times have you seen it in particular where softball is down 4-0 in the 7th and they have a storybook comeback? I mean, they just came running back. And guess what? The walk-off came with 2 outs too,
Yes.
which was awesome.
Well, and we're hammering this point home a little bit too much, but at the same time, like,
What?
I mean, oh my gosh.
Holy moly.
Yeah, before we move on to game 2, let's go through actually the bottom of the 7th, because I was actually talking to Rain Wilson, by the way, who was your analyst on the ACC Network this past weekend. She played at Duke, so she has obviously a large, pull out your scorebook. She has a Yes. She has a pretty well-rounded understanding for the game of softball, of course. Started her career at JMU, transferred to Duke, played in the ACC, and she talked to me about how that was a coaching masterclass by Pete Demore in the 7th. I mean,
100%.
pressed all the right buttons. So Valerie Cagle, who is essentially the Shohei Ohtani away from Anaheim in the sport of softball. And yes, there are more players in college softball that are two-ways, but she coming into the series essentially was hitting 500, and she had an ERA that was close to sub 1. She led the team with 18 homers, 53 RBIs. She comes back out. She's throwing a scoreless 6 innings. She's thrown a scoreless 6 innings thus far. She's trying to finish off, a scoreless ball game. Emma Ritter, infield single to start the frame. Bree Peck, 2-run homer, makes it a 4-2 ball game. Kelsey Bennett grounds out back to Cagle in the circle. Morgan Overitis then pinch hits for Kylie Aldridge on her senior day. She singles through the left side.
Yep.
Kylie Aldridge then runs for Morgan Overitis. Madison Hanson pinch hits for Tegan Thrunk. She singles through the left side. First and second, 1 out. Jenna Pearson runs for Madison Hanson. Kelsey Brown strikes out for just the 4th time this year. And then the first pitch, Cameron Fagan, boom, out towards left center field. It just all worked out. It was awesome to see for Virginia Tech.
No, Rain was, to a T on that one. That was a coaching masterclass by Pete Demore. He, like you said, pressed all the right buttons from pinch hitting to pinch runners. And obviously has coached, and you see it throughout the series, coached the team so well with situational base running. Emma Ritter was a dog on the base paths this series. She was really good, especially in game 3. But yeah, you had the sequence perfect. And what I love about this is, calling that inning, you could sense the momentum building up, especially with a quick start where Ritter gets through and then Pack with a 2-run shot. You're like, oh, just like that, the Hokies are back in it. There's no outs yet. Then Bennett grounds out. You're like, all right, they got 2 outs to work with. I mean, it's still surmountable for sure. So then you get 2 straight singles. You're like, okay, this is really good. I mean, the tying run is on first base in the form of Maddie Hanson, who was sub back on by Thrunk, or did Hanson stay on the base paths?
She was pinch ran for.
Because that's the thing.
Jenna Pearson ran for her. Pearson ran for her.
Tegan Thrunk. I mean, that is literally a substitution masterclass. Maddie Hanson hit for Tegan Thrunk and then got subbed out on the base paths. I mean, like, he pushed every single button he could possibly push.
Brought the right girls to the plate, and then when they got on, upgraded in speed, gave you an opportunity to score.
And it's so ironic that Kelsey Brown strikes out. Again, that's a girl where you expect her to get a knock, probably bring in a run there, make it closer. She's not a power bat at all. And then, like you said, she struck out for only the 4th time this season. I mean, that tells you how good she's been hitting. And then what does Fagan do? I mean, you wouldn't say a no-doubter, but she hit that ball well. That was awesome in game 1.
So Hokies win game 1, 5-4. You go to game 2. It starts just 30 minutes later. And how about this? In the first inning, we're in the top of the first. Fireworks galore, right? Second and third, nobody out. Hokies recording out. Lindsey Grind gets the start, and chaos ensues. So Mackenzie Clark, who's on third, there's a chopper back to the circle. Grind fields it, throws home. There's a rundown with Clark in between third and home plate. She's dead to rights. The trail runners are following her. So second and third. And at that point, you just kind of give yourself up. You should probably, at least. There's nowhere for you to go. And you can watch the video. I think this is a fair way to categorize it. I'm curious to get your thoughts. She lowers the shoulder on Jamie Bailey.
Yeah.
She flew in the air. It was like a free safety hitting a wide receiver.
Yeah, that's the way to describe it.
Immediately, the fan base is chirping at the fact that Mackenzie Clark should be tossed out of the ball game. Pete DeMore comes out, contests that, talks with the home plate umpire, Scott Mayer, I believe it was on Saturday.
Scott Mayer was the crew chief then, yeah.
Okay, and so they go look at it. They come back. They toss Mackenzie Clark out of the game, and John Rittman, the Clemson head coach, loses it.
Yeah, so... Yeah, that got messy, right? Like you said, Pickle on the third base line, the third base path, and couple of throws. I think Tech did a good job of minimizing throws, which is what you want to do on a fielding play like that. And what made the play kind of ascend to, a high octane is the fact that Bennett, when she had the ball chasing Clark down back towards home plate on the second throw, wasn't fast enough to catch Clark. So then she had to kind of throw the ball, flick it late to Jamie Bailey, who came from first base down to home plate to cover the back end of the base path. She's in front of home plate. Ball's flicked to her real quick. And this is where what they call Rule 9.5 comes into place. Rain,
technical.
Rain's the one that found that. So credit to Rain Wilson. She looked it up. Rule 9.5 on the base pads. The base runner has to make an evident effort to get on base without intentionally making contact with a fielder. So after reviewing, she was thrown out because it appeared that she had lowered her shoulder when still a decent distance away from home plate. So by technicality, she was thrown out. Rain and I were a little more forgiving on the broadcast for the network, and we're just, it's a softball play, especially with the style that older folk in Blacksburg are used to, you could say, where, the rule book isn't as gone to as often. So I want to give Mackenzie Clark the benefit of the doubt, because Rain said she knows her decently well and that she's just a girl who plays with her hair on fire, but she's a sweet girl, which I'm very certain of. So I don't want to add any controversy or fuel to the fire. I think the rivalry, like I said, is kind of building itself here. But yeah, that was a wacky play. And as you said, Rittman was not happy. They come out, the runner's out. Rittman, as a matter of fact, I think was also protesting that it was fielder's obstruction, that Clark should have scored because Bailey was right in the base path. But obviously that was not the case. So yeah, Rittman fires his hat to the ground and was protecting his player. So I'm not upset, not that I have a right to be, with John Rittman for being upset, whether or not he had a right to be upset, So yeah, then we're 2-3 outs into the ball game or whatever it was, and we have 2 ejections already. I mean, it is already 7 2/3 into the series, has already been everything on the bingo card of softball. It was nuts.
Yeah, no, it really was nuts. And again, you talk about the momentum carried over from game 1 into game 2. It just felt like, because Virginia Tech escaped the jam. They didn't give up a run in the first. Yeah. Second and third, nobody out. They did not surrender a run. So that was huge. You feel like the emotions are flying high. The crowd is in the game. The crowd was awesome on Saturday, by the way, for the doubleheader. Virginia Tech then proceeds to get 3 in the fourth. A safety squeeze executed perfectly by Morgan Overitis. That puts Tech up 1-0. Emma Ritter an RBI single. And then Kelsey Bennett an RBI single gives the Hokies the 3-0 advantage. Morgan Overitis, actually, ironically enough, came into the game for Jamie Bailey, who had to leave the game because of that collision back in the second, I want to say. She stayed in at the time, eventually left. And according to head coach Pete DeMore, she's day-to-day. She was not dressed yesterday in the Game 3 loss, but just an all-around great performance by Virginia Tech. Lindsey Grimes, too, you got to hit on her. In the circle was absolutely phenomenal. Just surrendered a solo shot to Jaden Roskowski, who ironically enough took over for Mackenzie Clark, but she was really, really good. Had a really solid start against Florida State the week prior, really carried the momentum over, was fantastic against Clemson, was nails, and got the job done for the Hokies to take the victory 3-1.
Right, so Hokies, they take the first 2 against Clemson, and by 2 games into the series, my takeaway were, for Virginia Tech in particular, I had 2 takeaways. One, Jamie Bailey's a baller. For her to
tough girl.
Yeah, for her to spit out blood and then just strut off the field, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that
was pretty cool. She's definitely a grinder, and that's why she's fit in the Hokies program for so long. And then Cam Fagan, also a baller, because what does she do after a walk-off home run? She goes 2 for 3 with 2 singles the next game.
Yeah,
I mean, she rakes. I mean, to be
first
fair,
inning,
all the
went
Hokies
into right center field, I want to say.
Yeah,
first inning, like her next at bat, 45 minutes later, shot into right center field.
Yeah. No, I mean, so it's just excellent. And again, a coaching masterclass as well. That game, outside of the ejections at first, was pretty normal otherwise, though. But the final takeaway, Lindsey Grine shined in this series. It is so promising with the way that Lemley has I don't even want to say struggled. She's just faced really good teams. And, Rain also had another good point of the broadcast. When you're a sophomore, there's more tape on you. Yeah. So it's awesome to see Grind acting as that secondary arm out of the pen and being really strong. She pitched well against Florida State, although they lost, and then she shut down the show in Game 2 against Clemson. Really promising stuff.
And it's an adjustment, too, for Emma Lemley being the number 1.
Yeah.
And it finally feels like Lindsey Grind has slid into that number 2 role gorgeously. I mean, 7 innings pitched, 6 hits, a run, and was earned, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. It was interesting, too, because she was in a very similar situation last week. And Pete DeMore opted to take her out of the game after 6, brought in Emma Lemley. She blows the save. Florida State ends up winning the game. This time, Coach DeMore sticks with Lindsey Grind in the circle. It proves dividends. A shutdown 7th inning. She was marvelous, and she was probably one of the stories of the weekend. So that is very, very promising going into postseason play. On Sunday, Hokies end up falling 5-4. Tech was leading this one 4-1 halfway through 5, I want to say, or through 4, I want to say, and it just kind of unraveled late. I want to say it can kind of even out from game 1. If you're Clemson, you feel like you should win game 1 up 4-0. If you're Virginia Tech, you feel like you should win up 4-1. They kind of even out. But again, just an awesome weekend for Virginia Tech softball. Easily, in my opinion, the best weekend of the year. You take 2 of 3 from the number 6 team in the land, a team that has been in the top 5 pretty much throughout the year. You're playing well now. Going into this Clemson series, you had lost 4 straight. You probably weren't playing your best softball, but you have a really, really nice weekend. It is very encouraging to see the Hokies finish up with Liberty in Lynchburg on Wednesday. They then have the ACC tournament. They're going to be the 5 seed up in South Bend. And then who knows, this team could be very dangerous in a regional. They're probably going to be a 2 seed and probably going to have to head elsewhere. A regional is likely not bound for Blacksburg this year. We'll see what can maybe happen in a super if crazier things, play out. But, Virginia Tech, I think they're going into postseason play, essentially 1 game left, but they're essentially going into postseason play, playing their best softball of the year, and what better time?
Yeah, one would say that I cannot help but agree.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely a good point there. And Rain, again, had great analysis. She had one good point that stuck with me after this series, outside of what we agreed was a possible growth of a rivalry in the ACC, is that when it comes to the committee, as compared, the committee with the seeding as compared to the actual national rankings, you find that either Clemson's a lot closer to the 24th ranked team in the country, or Virginia Tech's a lot closer to the 6th ranked team in the country. Obviously, it's somewhere in the middle. As a matter of fact, I think they could meet somewhere very close to each other in the middle after this week. Now, the standings come out. They come out on Mondays, don't they?
You mean the rankings?
Yes. Sorry.
Tuesday.
Okay.
So
I was wrong.
They'll jump up.
Yeah. I'd imagine they'll end up very close to each other. I mean, it was a competitive series, even with the first 2 being taken by Virginia Tech. They weren't easy ones. And so my final takeaway with game 3, Lindsey Grind finally looked human. The 6th inning is where it came through for Clemson. Ruskowski was a really nice addition for Rittman for the Clemson Tigers. She stepped in for Clark, hit a solo shot. That was her first home run of the season. Next game the following afternoon, which was yesterday, she went deep with a solo shot again as the second batter in the 6th inning, which started a little bit of the carousel for the Tigers to take that 5-4 lead. So yeah, it was back and forth, super competitive. And then you have that 2-run shot from Reedy Davenport 2 at-bats later, where from my angle looked foul. Obviously, it was fair. I also have poor eyesight. So you had a better angle, though. Let's talk real quick. Let's talk about that one. That one skied over the left field foul pole.
Yeah.
How fair was it?
I thought it was a fair ball.
Yeah.
I am surprised that the umpiring crew did not review it. Because why not review it,
Yeah.
He thought it was fair. So Gio thought it was fair. I thought it was a fair ball.
You guys had better angles than me. I literally said it was foul on the broadcast, which is embarrassing. And I said, no, it's fair.
That happens. No, I thought it was a fair ball. I think it was close. I know Kelsey Brown was contesting it was foul, but it gives Clemson the lead. They lead 5-4, and, the rest is history. But, again, really strong series from Virginia Tech. You would have liked to have swept, of course. But at the same time, when you go into a weekend series against the 6th-ranked team in the land, of course you're going to take a series victory, and that's exactly what the Hokies did. So awesome job by Virginia Tech on the softball diamond this weekend. It's nice to talk Virginia Tech softball. I know they had been struggling a little bit the last few weekends, and to see them, come through this past weekend and do their thing and probably be back in the top 20 next week. And again, 5 seed in South Bend in a couple weekends. Wouldn't shock me if they go on a run, win the ACC.
Yeah.
It's a single elimination tournament. You never know, and I don't know. Florida State seems to be the best team in the ACC, but Virginia Tech, they seem right there with Clemson. I think they want to see Duke again after that series earlier in the year, but huge series victory for Virginia Tech, and very nice to see for sure.
Yeah, I think by tomorrow afternoon we'll see 5 to 6 teams possibly ranked in the ACC because Louisville's making their jump back up. So they'll probably enter the rankings after this week too. The ACC is as competitive as it's ever been, but once again, it remains the question: what team can beat Florida State right now? Doesn't look like any team can, because you had Clemson. They were 2 in the ACC standings before this series. They got swept. Virginia Tech was a threat early in the season. Then they met the Seminoles. They got swept. Florida State is freaking good, man. So we'll see how that turns out. But like you said, and I agree, I think the Hokies, considering Grind has become that secondary and Jacobson has filled in as a good tertiary arm out of the bullpen as well, the Hokies have a possibility of finding themselves in a super regional for sure after what could be a good run in the ACC tournament.
All right, Kyle. Appreciate your time as always.
No problem.
Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah,
it was a fun time.
I talk a lot, don't I?
No,
it was a
great.
fun series,
Hokies
though.
finish up with Liberty on Wednesday in Lynchburg, and then the ACC tournament, which is not this weekend, but the following weekend in South Bend. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of TSL Today. Thanks to Chris Hirons and Giovanni Heater for hopping on in the first segment to talk Tech baseball, and then Kyle Marchak in the second segment. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later this week.